Let's now develop the second model class. In the previous tutorial video, we talked about the CourseRecord class. So now we talk about which another class which is going to contain a collection or an array of course records. So let's create a class called students. Each student has a name, and also each student has a collection or an array of course records. Okay, let's see how we can do that. So let's just close the previous two classes over here. Let's just close all of them, and then let's create in the same package. Right click and new Java class. Let's call that students. Okay. So now in the student class, we can simply say, we can override this comments over here. We can say each student object stores a name and a collection of course record objects. Actually, this saying over here is not very exactly accurate. Remember we said before, each reference variable only stores the address of some objects. So the more precise way of saying this should be, we should say a collection of addresses of course record objects. Okay, so just make sure. But I will draw a diagram in this tutorial video to show you. Okay, in a moment. Okay, let's declare these two attributes over here. And again, this is something you haven't seen before. First of all, we say string name over here. For example, it can be Jim. And also we have, now how do we declare an array of course record addresses? How do we say that, right? So now remember, for the array, we're going to do the opening and closing square brackets. Now for the type, for each element of the array, we have to give either int, double, boolean, or string, or now it can be any class name you like. So now we can simply put course record. Okay, it's a class name over here. And then so this again, course record over here is the type for each element in the array, each individual element in the array. And this square brackets over here means we're going to collect all such addresses, all such objects together as an array. And then we're going to say also give a name for the variable. So this is the name of the variable, courses. Okay, let's make some comments over here, because that's the very first time you see this such declaration, which in some ways is quite sophisticated. So let's better understand what this line really means before we move on. Okay, let's make a comment over here. Oh, beg your pardon, like that. Okay, so now we declare a reference variable called courses. Courses. Okay, let's do double quote. Okay, courses. Okay, that's the name of the variable, being an array. Okay, just an array. How do we know it's an array? We can simply tell that it's opening and closing square brackets over here. Okay, each element in this array is conceptually a reference variable. So you can think about an array is simply, an array in this case is simply a collection of reference variables. For example, whenever you say courses at position 0, remember for the array, we can refer to its elements with their indices, index 0, index 1, index 2, until courses.length -1, the last index. Okay, so courses 0, courses 1, all the way to courses, and then you can say courses the length -1 are reference variables that, and then we can say each of which storing the address of some course record object. Okay, one more illustration. It's as if we declare a list of, we explicitly declare a list of reference variables. For example, you can say, okay, I'm just making an illustration. This is not really what we do, but it's as if we did that. Okay, you can think about courses is simply an array of course record. So it's as if we do the following. We can say courses 0, that's variable number 1, and then it is of type course records. And then we also got another course record, and then we can have courses 1, and then course record, and then courses 2, and etc. Okay, so this list over here is declaring a number of course record reference variables explicitly. Okay, and this is very similar to how we learned before about a point and point collector. Remember, a point collector has 2 point objects over there. If you have doubts, you can refer to the tutorial for review. By now, we're saying that in general, we don't want to explicitly declare so many variables of the same type. What we can do is we can simply use an array of the same type for each element to collect such references. Okay, that's what we're doing here. Okay, really try to review this block of comments over here carefully. That really tells you what this line means, what's the consequence of declaring this line. But we'll illustrate to you by visualizing the objects at runtime. We'll do that in a moment. Okay, so now we got these 2 attributes over here, and then let's say we have some constraint. So because you don't want to say a student can really register for an unlimited number of courses each semester. Let's be realistic. Okay, so I'm gonna show you a pattern of doing such things. To say you have a collection of objects in your class as attributes, and you have some certain limits about how many objects you can add into the array, and also how you can do this. So there's a whole pattern over here I want to show you in this video here. Okay, so now what we can do, first of all, we can say, let's declare final a constant to say what's the upper limits for how many courses you can add to your array. So final int, and then maximum number of courses is assigned to, let's say 5. Okay, so this is really fixed. So this tells us as soon as you reach 5 courses already, if you try to add the number 6, it should be considered as an error, and there should be something done differently for that. Okay, and also I'm going to show you another integer attributes. This is part of the pattern. Okay, you can think about every time when you have an array of reference attributes, you should always have the attributes I'm going to show you right now. You should really think of them as a pair that work together. Okay, so over here I will say integer, okay, number of courses, NOC, okay, number of courses. Okay, so now before I make the detailed comments about how this works, I would like to illustrate very quickly about how this is going to work before I define the methods. Okay, let's go to iPad. Let's think about at a runtime how this is going to work. Okay, now imagine that let's just draw a diagram. Let's say we have some course record, let's say CR. Oh, sorry, not course record. We have, remember we talk about students class. Okay, let's say we have some student objects. So let's say we have a student variable called S of type students. And then S stores the address of some objects of type students. Okay, like that. We're going to draw that over here. And then over here we have this being of type students. And now what attributes do we have? We have currently, we have name, we have courses, and we have NOC, these 3. So this is constant which never changes. We don't include it in the box. Okay, you just know that we do have some maximum limits on the number of courses you can add to the array. So we only include 1, 2, and 3 attributes. Okay, so now we have name over here, and we have also courses, which is an array, and also we have NOC, the number of courses. let's think about how it will work at the runtime. I'm going to just show you the diagram first, and then we'll show you how you can, once you understand how it works visually, it's rather easily translated into Java. Okay, so now the name can be very easy. Let's say simply just Jim, like that. And then what about the courses? What should be the case initially? Because we know that we do have a maximum limit on the number of courses you can add to the array. So now we say that it's going to be 5 in this case. So now that means it would be sufficient to create an array of size 5, because if you wouldn't go beyond that. So any attempt to actually add the course number 6 into the array will be considered as an error anyway. So it would be sufficient to create an array of size 5. So now you can think about when we first initialize the students, we're going to create an array which is going to be just another object. So that means we're going to use an arrow to say this courses over here, this courses attribute over here is not going to store the array directly. It's only going to store the address of some array of size 5. Okay, so now it's going to point to some array. Okay, let me just draw a little bit longer for the arrow. Okay, so now you can think about, let me just draw it better. Okay, so now this is going to point to some array of size 5. That's a maximum size. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with indices 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so we got 5 slots, and each one of them, you can see this slot over here is going to store the address of some course record objects, and this slot over here can also store the address of some course record object, and etc. for all the others. What about initially? Initially, they don't store anything yet. So by default, they will only be storing null address by default. So I will simply just put null over here. Null. Also null. Also null. Also null. Also null over here. What about NOC over here? The number of courses. Well, it should make sense. Initially, there will be there are no courses registered for the student just yet, so it will just be 0. Okay, so that will be the initial picture of a student record of a student objects. So we have name, we have courses, which stores the address of some array of size 5 with indices 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and each element in the array simply stores null to begin with by default. And then we also got NOC, which stands for number of courses, and this attribute over here stores tells us how many courses have you stored so far for the students. If initially the student has not registered for any courses, this value should just be 0. And then later on, we can gradually add more courses one by one, so NOC will be incremented gradually as well. Okay, let's see how that works. So now, let's say I simply want to say, let's not worry about Java just yet. Let's just draw a diagram. Okay, let's say I want to add a course record. If I want to add a course record, let's say the course record I would like to add, let's just create some course record objects first. Okay, so we know that for each course record, it simply has object like that. Okay, let's say we got course record over this. Okay, over here. So now we have one object, course record. Okay, let's say over here, remember we got 2 attributes for the course record, right? So if you go back to the course record class, you can see that we got title and we have marks over here. We got 2 attributes. Okay, so now we got title, and then we have marks. Okay, let's say the marks, let's say we use version 2 of the constructor. So the marks would just be 0 by default, and then we have title, let's say EECS 1022, like that. Okay, let's say there's a course record object. So we talked about in the previous video how you can create such objects. Okay, let's say this is CR1, which is pointing to this particular course objects, course record objects. And now, how do we say we want to add a course record and then CR1? Of course, we talk about S. You can think about S dot add course record. So S students is actually the context object to be changed. So S dot add course record CR1. Somehow we want to add this particular object over here that is being pointed to by CR1. Somehow we want added into this particular array over here, s.courses. How do we add it? So that's a question. Okay. So now, visually speaking, it's very easy. Okay, because we know that every element in this array over here is pointing to something, right? Storing some address over here. Initially, all of them simply just store null. So what we want to do is, because we know that currently there's no course record objects being pointed to by the array just yet. So now, if we want to do it, it would be like this. So now we know that this is 0 over here. 0 over here tells us two things. Okay, let me put it here. The NOC over here tells us two things. One, so we have the number of courses. That's number one. Okay. Second one, which is a little bit more technical. That means the index of array to store the next course record objects. So now the point number 2 is a little bit more abstract at this point, but I'll try to illustrate to you. So now at the moment it is 0. That means we have 0 courses registered so far for this particular students. And also 0 means if you want to add any particular course into this for this student here, you have to add it at position 0 of the array. Okay, so now what we'll do is somehow we want to say rather than pointing to here, pointing to now, we're going to let it point to this course record objects. That's what we want to do. Okay, so we're just drawing diagram, and I'm going to show you how you can do this in Java in just a moment. Okay, so now basically let's think about what this arrow is doing over here. Okay, let's think about it. You can think about we are trying to copy the address for this particular object over here, and the address is stored in CR1, right? And we're trying to copy whatever address that is stored in CR1 into this slot over here. But what is this slot? This slot, this is how you can represent it. Okay, so now we know that S is the students objects, and when we say S dot courses, you can think of every time when you see things like this, when you see dot, you can think about dot represents this particular arrow you're talking about. So S dot courses is like S, follow that, and then go to the one that's pointing to by S, and then courses. S dot courses means this particular attributes. And now let's go a little bit further. Okay, you can always go further as long as the pointer will let you. Okay, we can see there's another pointer over here, so we can use another dot. So S dot courses dot. Okay, so now you can see that dot, which refers to already this particular array. So whenever we talk about array, we don't use dot. Okay, so we simply just use square brackets over here to actually talk about the which element we want to refer to. Now we're referring to position number 0. Okay, over here. So that means we want to, when we talk about S dot courses, okay, let me just write a little better. So you have S dot courses at position 0. Okay, that's the notation you have to know how to do it. Okay, and then we have S dot courses at position 0, and then we want to actually store something into it. So now you can see S dot courses at position 0 is referring to this particular slot of the array. And now we want to copy the address that is stored in CR1 into there, so that it will represent this particular arrow that we are trying to connect. So how do we do that? We can simply say S dot courses at position 0 is assigned to CR1. Okay, that's what you can do. Okay, so now after we have done this, what should we do? We should also increment NOC. For the reason that, so now that we actually already got one course registered to the array, into the student object. So now this should be updated to 1. Okay? So now you can think about NOC conceptually, you can think about as this. So NOC used to be 0, is now 1. So you can think about initially NOC is kind of pointing to the first elements of the array, and now after that we're moving the pointer to the right by 1 position. So NOC is now pointing to here. Okay, that's another way to think about it. Okay, so hopefully this visualization can really help you a little bit. We're trying to warm you up for the Java code. The Java code itself is very easy to write, but the idea behind that is rather sophisticated. That's why I'm trying to illustrate to you by diagram first. Okay, what about we want to add a second course? Okay, hopefully adding a second course will strengthen your understanding. Let me now use a different color. Okay, let's say we got another course over here. Let's call it CR2, which is pointing to some other course record object over here. And then let's call it course record. Okay, course record here. And then we also got title, and we have marks. Okay, let's say for the title we can say EECS, let's say 2030. Okay, just easy, it doesn't matter the name. And then the mark is also 0. Okay, so now we want to add the second course into the array. So what should we do? If you want to add a second course into the array, now what we want to do is like this. Basically, conceptually, you want to connect in the following way. Let's use a different color here. So now you want to say, because currently NOC is pointing to this particular position over here. So NOC, again, it talks about 2 things. NOC has 2 meanings. First of all, currently we have added 1 course into the course array. And second, if you want to add a second course into the array, you better start with position 1. Okay, that's what it means. Okay, so now that means we want to say for position 1 over here, this first second element in the array, rather than pointing to null, it is now going to point to this particular object that is pointed to by CR2. Okay, so what we really want to do is as follows. We want to somehow to say, for this particular slot of the array, we want to store the address that is also stored in CR2 over here, so that we can have this effects of the arrow over here, this connection over here. So how do we do that? Okay, let's see how we can do that. It's going to be very similar to what we did before, very similar. So we can say s dot courses, which refer to the array. So now at position 1, okay, it's now at position 1, is assigned to, you can see CR2 over here, CR2, and also at the same time we should also say NOC++. Okay, so NOC++, that means it's going to go from 1 to 2. So conceptually, you can think about NOC is not referring to 1 anymore. It's now referring to 2. So what does that mean? That means so far we have added 2 courses to the course array. And then if you want to add a third course, you better start with position 2 of the array. Okay, so there are 2 purposes for this NOC counter. Again, I'm trying to show you a particular pattern for understanding this, for managing this array attribute over here. So you can adding objects by objects into this particular array, 1 by 1. Okay. Also, as a practice, you can think about what's going to happen if you have, let's say, a third course record object to be added into the array. You can also try to do the diagram by yourself. Okay. Let's now go back to Java code and let's see how we can do that. Okay. So now, let's now first of all talk about how we can initialize the student objects. Let's go back to students over here. So now let's now also document what the NOC really mean. Okay, let's document that very quickly. This NOC, number of courses, integer counter has 2. purposes. Okay, number one, it indicates how many courses, how many course record objects have been added to the courses array. Okay, that's purpose number one. Purpose number two, it indicates which position or index of the courses array should store the next course record objects. Okay, so it has these two purposes as I illustrated to you on the iPad. Okay, so now how do we actually create a constructor and also the mutated method for adding courses? And I'll show you some tests here quickly. Okay, so now let's now go to, first of all, we have students over here. So we have students, and then which takes no parameter. Okay, over here. Let's say we try to initialize the array because we know that it can we can only store up to 5 courses. Okay, so now what we can do is we can now use a syntax for creating a new array. So we can say courses is assigned to new course record, and then what's the size? You can simply use the constant over there. Okay, and that's it. And if you like, you can also say NOC initially should just be 0. But this line over here is not so necessary because if you didn't do it, it would just be uninitialized and keep the default value 0, which will be the same. Okay. Okay. So this is a constructor over here. And then let's have a mutator to illustrate exactly how we add courses one by one, starting from index 0 and then index 1 and then index 2. Okay, how do we do that? The way to do that is by defining a mutated method. So let's say void add course. Okay, and then so let's say we can take a course record objects. So over here we can either say add course. Okay, let's just follow exactly what I illustrated. Add course record, and then course record objects is a type of the parameter, and then we can say CR like that. Course record. Okay, CR. And now, remember what we showed before. You can see for adding the first course record, we simply say s.courses at position 0 is assigned to CR1, which is the address that is stored in CR1. And then do NOC++. And also we do CR2 over here. And also for the second course record object, which is s.courses at position 1. And then it's assigned to the address that is stored in CR2. And then NOC++. So there's a general pattern over here that we can keep reusing. You can think about the CR1 and CR2 over here are the inputs to the methods, the input parameters. And the courses at position 0, courses at position 1. So these depend on the value of the NOC. Okay, so let's see how we can do that. You can say this dot courses, which is the array, at position NOC. The first time we call this method here, NOC will be 0, and then increment it to 1. The second time we call that, NOC will be 1, and the third time, NOC will be 2, and etc. It's assigned to whatever the address that is stored in CR, which can be the input, which can be CR1 or CR2. I'll use a tester to illustrate to you in just a moment. Okay, and then we have also NOC++. Okay, and that's it. You can see that the Java code itself is very, very neat and concise. But to really understand how this code works, which I'll show you in tester, you should really understand this diagram, this visualization first. Okay, so now let's use a tester to show you very quickly. Okay, so now let's go to the package and then say new Java class, and then we can say students. Tester. Okay, student tester. And what we'll do is we're going to create a main method over here, public static void main string arts. Okay, so now let's do exactly what we did in the iPad. Let's create CR1 and CR2. Okay, so now course record CR1 is assigned to new course record, and then EECS 1022, and let's say CR2 would be EECS 2030. Okay, so we'll say course record CR2 is assigned to new course record EECS 2030. Okay, so we got a two course records, CR1 and CR2. So now let's create a new student objects. So we can say students. Oh, actually, you know what? Since student has a name, so what we can do is we can initialize student's name over here. Okay, let's go to constructor over here if you like. So string name, and then we can say this dot name is assigned to name. Okay. Now let's go back to student tester over here. We can say students. Let's say S. Okay, it's like an S over here. Okay, you can see the variable is called S, and then we can say it's a new students. And we pass the name of the students, Jin, for example. Okay, and then now how do we add the two courses over here? Okay, so this is what I would do. I would say s dot add course record. Okay, I'm gonna add course record CR1 and then add course record CR2. Okay, for your completeness, since we use green for the second one, I can say also add course record CR2, okay, just from the previous illustration. Okay, so now let's go back there. Okay, let's see what we can do. So add course record over here, so we can say CR1 and also s dot add course record CR2. Okay, so these are the two lines that we have to write, but now we want to see exactly how the state of the objects or the attribute values for the student S has been changed. That's exactly what we want to see. Especially we want to see how the array and also how the NOC counter has been changed. Okay, that's what we want to see. Okay, let's see the following. What we can do is let's go to the student class over here. So now this is what we can do. Okay, so we can now simply say, let's have a toString method over here. toString method. Okay, so now string s is assigned to empty string, and then eventually return s. So now what we can do, first of all, s plus equal NOC, number of courses, is what value? This dot NOC. That's what we want to do initially. And then we also want to know what's the contents of the array. How do we print out the contents of the array? This is what we can do. You can say s dot s plus equal, and then we can say courses is gonna be this array over here, and then let's use the curly brackets to signal the beginning of the array, and eventually we'll say the end of the array, like over here. And then what about the contents of the array? Okay, let's do that. Okay, so now what we do is for integer I is assigned to 0, I less than. So now we simply just do this dot courses dot length. Okay, we're going to print out the entire contents of the array so we can really see exactly what they store initially and also gradually as we add things up. And then I plus plus. Okay, you can see that this dot courses, which is the array, and then for the array we can say the length for its size. Okay, and then over here we can say for each, basically what we want to do is for each slot over here, let's say this slot versus this slot over here. For this slot here, it's simply pointing to null, so we can just print out null. For this slot over here, it's not pointing to null, it's actually pointing to some course record objects, in which case we can print out the course record, which we already did in the toString method of the course record class. Okay, that's what we're going to do. So this is what you can say. You can just make it a selection. You can say if this dot courses at position I. Okay, And then if this particular address that is stored in this particular slot is equal to null, if that's actually null, in that case we can say s plus equal null. Okay. Otherwise, it is not equal to null. So every time when you are dealing with reference attributes, you should be careful because you can only call methods on a reference variable when it does not store null. Otherwise, you will get a null pointer exception. Okay. So now we can say s plus equal this dot courses at position I. Okay. So this gives us the this one gives us over here. You can say, I'll give you one example. Okay. So let's say this. Remember, I said before, whenever you have dot, it's as if in Java, what about diagram? In the diagram, you can think about it's like an arrow over here. Okay, that's some aside for you to take notes. Okay, so now let's think about what it really means. Let me just write out some complicated expression over here for you. I would say s dot courses at position 1 and then dot to string. Okay, so what does that mean? Let's understand this. So now let's go one by one. When I say let me just break it down into different parts. Let's say when I say s dot means s and follow the arrow to the objects. That's s dot. Okay, and then once I get to s dot, that means this particular student objects. And then I would say courses at position 1. So that means courses which refer to this array over here, and then I want to go to position 1. Right? That means I go to position 1. That's what it means. Okay, go to position 1 of the array, and then I have another dot. So I'm going to follow another arrow. Okay, so and then I say dot to string. So now that means dot over here, which refers to this particular course record objects, and then call the toString method on that. So similarly, you can also do things like s dot courses, let's say also at position 1, and then dot title. So what does that mean? That means following the same arrow, and then I want to get this particular title value for this particular course record. Okay, that's how the dot notation can be used, right? So now let's go back here. So now we can say s plus equal this dot courses at position I dot to string. Okay, that's what you can do. So basically, every time, once you understand how you can visualize the object structure, that also indicates how you can use the dot notation back in your Java code. Okay, after this, one more thing, we want to separate each one of them by comma. So you can also say if I is less than I is a very standard way of doing a comma separated list. You can also refer to your lecture notes for this. I is less than this dot courses dot length minus 1, and then we'll say s plus equal comma, like that. Okay, let's see how this will work. So what we want to do is let's go back to the tester over here, and then we want to say immediately after student s is created, what we will do is we'll say system.out.println, we'll say s dot to string. Let's see what this is gonna do. Okay, let's now try to execute this student tester here. Right click on that, and then we're gonna run. Okay, so now you can see that, you know what, let me just improve this just a little bit. Let me go to students over here, and then maybe I should NOC, and then let's say plus a new line over here. So we'll separate into two lines, so it's easier for you to see. Okay, NOC, we got courses. Okay, let's try again. Let's go back to student tester here, and then play. Okay, what you will see is NOC initially is simply 0. That means we have not added any courses. And for the very first course you want to add, it will be stored at position 0. Okay, And then the courses array is going to be all nows. It's pretty much like how we said in the beginning. Now, 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 and now. Okay, it corresponds to exactly how we illustrated to you on the iPad. Okay, now we want to copy and paste the same line over here immediately after we added CR1. Okay, let me just say something like here. Okay, and let me just put it here. As out after adding the first course, like that. Okay, now let's say we say execute again. So now you can see that basically you will see that after adding the first course, and then you can see that NOC has now become 1, because remember every time we actually after adding the very first course we just say NOC ++. That's why it has become from being incremented from 0 to 1. And then you can see that the first slot over here, rather than storing null address, it is now storing the address which we used to actually call the toString method, and then it's simply just the object for CR1. Okay, exactly what we did before. You can see now over here for position 0 of the course array is now pointing to this particular course record object, which will be ECS 1022. Okay, ECS 1022, and also 0 marks to begin with. Okay, and now what about after, let's say also I'm gonna put over here after adding the second course. Okay, let's say at position 0, right? Because the NOC value at that point is 0 at position 1. Okay, what about this one here? Okay, now let's now put it here as the toString. Now what about after the second course? Let's predict what's going to happen. So now you can see that this is the latest states for the courses array after adding the first course. Now what's going to happen is this one should remain unchanged, and because we now know that at this point NOC is actually 1, that means we're going to add the second course to position 1, which is the second place of the array. So this this position here is going to store the address of CR2, which is pointing to this object over here for the course record. Okay, so now if you try to re-execute the code again, let's see what happened. If you see that, you will see NOC is now 2, and course record, you can see now we got the first object at position 0, which is CR1, and also the second course record object, which is CR2, and then the rest will still be now, now, and now. Okay, so now that's hopefully you can see the way I define the toString method shows you how things work. Okay, now finally, before I conclude about this new pattern here, this is really the most important video for this tutorial series. You really want to watch this very carefully, especially you want to understand how the visualized runtime interaction worked before you go to Java code. The Java code itself is very easy. It's very easy to write, but you don't memorize it because you can just make mistake. You really want to understand how things work over here. Okay, so now what we'll do is I just want to do debugger to show you. Okay, let's see exactly how it works. So now I'm gonna put a debugger over here, and then let's now for completeness, why don't we try to draw a brand new diagram? Okay, why don't we do that? Okay, it's going to take longer for the video, but I think it's worthwhile really for you to understand completely how things work. Okay, so now let's now I'll draw the diagram as we go. Okay, let's now say debug over here. Okay, over here we have CR1 and CR2. Okay, so now if I step over here, you can see we got CR1, which is storing the course record objects of address 490. Okay, so we have CR1 over here. Okay, let's go very slowly. Okay, so we got CR1 first of all. So we have CR1, which is pointing to a course record objects. I'll just say CR just for short. Okay, and also we have the title and the marks. Okay, so and also for short, I'm gonna say T for title and for marks. So that's EECS 10 22, and also 0 over here. And similarly, if we step over line number 6, what we will see is we're now going to have also another object over here, CR2. You can see the address is completely different. It's 490 versus 493. Okay, and then over here, let's just draw that diagram very quickly. So we got CR2, which is pointing to another separate course record objects. Course record, which also has 2 attributes, title and the marks. So here we got EECS 2030, and also the marks is also 0. Okay, so that's what we have achieved so far. We only got 2 courses, and now let's step over, and now we can see that up to now we have student. So this is the line we just executed. Okay, and what we did was, let me just put in the address very quickly. You can see for CR1 is 490. CR1 is 490. Okay, for CR2, it's actually 493 over here, 493. Okay, so now let's see that for line number 8 that we just executed, what we have is we have a new student object 498. So that's simply, you can see that, let's expand the object itself. Let's see how it looks like. Name is Jim, and courses, which is an array, and also NOC is 0, and then the constant we simply didn't include is 5. What about courses? Courses is simply just an array. You can see that the array, all elements are null. Okay, it just tells you all the elements are null. Okay, so now how do we draw that? Okay, the way we draw that is, let's go back there. So now we have S is, let me just draw that from here. S is now pointing to a student's objects. And then we have the 3 attributes that we care. So we have name, we have courses, and also we have number of courses NOC, right? So name is simply just Jin. And also the courses is going to be an array of size 5. How do we know the size of the array? We'll see that in just a moment. Okay, so we'll see that. So now we can also try to do, okay, let's just finish that, okay? And the courses, as I said before, is an array, which is pointing to an array objects, okay? So now it's going to be of size 5. How do I know that? Remember, in your student constructor over here, we created a new course record array of size 5 over here, okay? Okay, so now let's go back there, and then it's going to be of size 5. So 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so 5 slots over here. The indices start with 0, and then NOC is initially 0. Okay, that's what we have got from so far. And then now let's go very carefully for this first adding of the record. You can see that also. You can see it's no, 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 no. Okay. Oh, maybe initially I should really say we got no, 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 and also no. So we got 5 null slots over here. Okay, and then what about how do we execute this line? Let's now, rather than stepping over, let's step into. If you say step into over here, so what we will see is, let's now also, you can see that for students, the address is 498. Okay, let's put that very quickly. 498 over here. Okay, there's an address. So now, if I step into, you can see for CR1, the address is actually 490, right? And then we are trying to copy the address of CR1, which is 490, into the first slot of the array. Okay, let's see how exactly we do that. So now let's step into it, and now you will see that we are now in the context of the student class over here, and then we are trying to do this add course record objects method, mutated method over here. So now you can see that for CR, which is the parameter over here, you can see the address 490, and that's indeed 490, which is indeed CR1. Okay, and then What about this? This is 498, which is indeed S. Okay. So now, how do we execute this line? Let's be very, very careful over here. So now, when you say this dot courses at position NOC, you can see the index itself depends on the value for NOC. What's NOC? NOC at the moment is 0. So this will do exactly the following. Okay. So now let me just use blue for the first time. Okay. What we will do is so this dot course, this will be substituted by S. Okay. So S dot courses at position, you can see NOC at the moment is 0. Okay. At position 0 is assigned to CR. What is CR? CR at the moment is actually 490, which is CR1, right? That's the input we are passing. Okay. So now that will be just CR1. I'll just put CR1, but you know that it's actually I'll just put CR1 over here, but you know that it's actually 490. Okay, let me just do one more thing. So this is the method called for S dot add course record, and then we have CR1. Okay, and then this in turn is going to execute 2 lines of code when we step into. Okay, and the second line after this, if you say that over there, you can see that now what's going to happen to the array. Okay, so now if you expand this, which is student objects, and if you expand the courses as well, you can see that now we have the first slot at position 0 is now pointing to a course record object with address 490. And what is that? 490, which is exactly this object here. Okay, that's what we have done. So now rather than pointing to here, it is going to point to here. Okay, that's exactly what this line is doing. So S.courses at position 0 is referring to this slot over here, and then CR1 is referring to this address over here. Want to store this into this. Okay, that's exactly correspond to the arrow over here. Okay, after this, we also have to update NOC++. Okay, so now NOC++, NOC used to be 0, and it's now going to be 1. Okay, so now after that, it's going to be 1 over here. Okay, that's the first walkthrough. Okay, hopefully you have seen this the second time. Okay, for completeness, I just want to show you how you can do the second one. Okay, let's now step over, and now step over, step over. So this is the second time we call this method again. Now with CR2. Remember, CR2 has the address 493. Okay, so now let's now step into it. So now I'm calling the same method. You can see now CR over here is 493, which is now indeed referring to CR2. Okay, let's now do it again. Okay, let me use green over here. So now basically what we're doing is we're doing s.add course record, and then we have CR2, and then it will in turn execute 2 lines from the add course record method over here. The first line will be, this will be replaced by the context object, which is this. It's now 498. You can see that, which is S. Okay, so now it will do s dot courses at position. So now NOC, which has been incremented from the previous invocation of the same method, is now 1. Okay, so now at position 1 is assigned to CR, and the CR over here is 493, which is referring to CR2. So I'm going to put CR2 over here. And then after this, what's going to happen? Basically, we're saying that s.courses at position 1 is now referring to this slot over here. And then CR2 is referring to this address over here. We want to copy this address into this slot. So what you will do, visually speaking, is, so rather than pointing to now, it's now going to point to this object over here. Okay, it's now going to point to this. So that's what this line will do. After that, we have to again update NOC so that the next time we want to add the third course, it will start from position 2. Okay, so now that's why we'll step over NOC currently 1. Now we increment that, it becomes 2. Okay, that's exactly what we do. You can feel free to actually add one more add course record invocation, and then try to see how the NOC and also the course record object will be connected. That's left as an exercise for you. Okay, so far we talk about this new programming pattern for you, where you have an array, an attribute of type array of some class name over here. That's you connect the student class and the course record class over here. Okay, so you should really review this video very carefully to see if you really understand what's going on over here. And then in the student tester, we also show you exactly how the NOC and also the array has been changed. Okay, so now of course we can keep going until we reach the maximum limits, which will allow you to only store 5 elements in the array. We'll get to error checking at the end of the tutorial series. We'll get there later. Okay, that's about for this particular video. I should really review the concept before you move on.